Let me tell you about the day my doctor actually sat down in shock. I'm 78 years old, and last month during my annual checkup, my physician, who's barely 52, looked at my lab results and said something I'll never forget. He said, "Whatever you're doing, I need to start doing it myself, because your numbers are better than mine." Now, this is the same doctor who's been warning me for years about slowing down, about being careful, about following all the traditional advice for someone my age. But here's what made his jaw drop. When I told him exactly how I live my daily life, he went quiet, because almost everything I do goes against what he learned in medical school. You see, I spent most of my life following the rules. I ate the foods I was supposed to eat, even when they tasted like cardboard. I forced myself awake when my body begged for rest. I avoided pleasures because I thought discipline equaled health. And you know what happened? I felt exhausted, disconnected, and older than my years. But about a decade ago, something shifted. I started questioning whether all these rules were actually helping me or just making me miserable. So I did something radical. I started listening to my body instead of the voices of supposed experts. And what I discovered changed everything. The habits I'd been told were dangerous, irresponsible, even reckless, turned out to be the exact things my body needed to thrive. Today, I'm going to share with you the 5 unconventional approaches that transformed my health in ways that shocked my medical team. And I promise you, at least 3 of these will make you question everything you thought you knew about aging well.
Before we dive into these 5 game-changing habits, I need to tell you why I even started this journey. About 12 years ago, I was sitting in my doctor's office, and he handed me a list. It was titled Healthy Aging Guidelines. You've probably seen something similar. It told me to eat only low-fat foods, to never nap during the day because it would ruin my nighttime sleep, to limit coffee to 1 cup maximum, to go to bed early every single night, and to stay serious and focused because stress came from being too relaxed. I looked at that list and felt something inside me break. Not because the advice was difficult, but because following it had made me feel worse, not better. I'd been doing everything on that list for years, and where had it gotten me? I was constantly tired but couldn't sleep well at night. I was always hungry but never satisfied. My brain felt foggy by mid-afternoon, and I'd forgotten what it felt like to genuinely enjoy a meal or a moment of rest. So I made a decision that day. I crumpled up that paper and threw it away. Not out of disrespect, but out of desperation. I needed to try something different because the conventional path was slowly draining the life out of me. What I didn't know then was that science was already starting to prove what my body had been trying to tell me all along. Major universities, research institutions, places like Harvard and Johns Hopkins and Stanford were publishing studies that completely contradicted the old advice. They were discovering that many of the things we'd been taught to avoid were actually protective, healing, even life-extending. But this information wasn't reaching most people. Doctors were still teaching from outdated textbooks, health magazines were still recycling the same tired advice from the 1970s, and millions of people like me were suffering because of it. So what I'm about to share with you isn't just my personal experience. Every single habit I'm going to describe is backed by rigorous scientific research from the world's leading institutions. But more importantly, these habits are backed by how I feel, by the quality of my life, and by the shocked expressions on my doctor's face when he sees proof that an entirely different approach can work beautifully.
The first habit that changed my life is something that would have horrified my younger self. I take a deliberate, guilt-free rest every single afternoon. Not a quick doze in a chair while the television blares. I'm talking about an intentional, planned pause where I lie down in my bedroom, close the curtains, set a gentle alarm, and allow myself to drift into genuine rest for about 45 minutes. When I first started doing this, the guilt was overwhelming. I'd been raised to believe that daytime rest was for children, sick people, or lazy people. Productive adults pushed through fatigue. They powered on with willpower and caffeine. Resting during the day meant you were weak or undisciplined. But here's what I learned. That belief is not only wrong, it's actually harmful. Our bodies run on natural rhythms called circadian cycles. These aren't lifestyle choices, they're biological realities hardwired into our DNA. And one of these rhythms creates a natural dip in energy and alertness every afternoon, usually between 1 and 3 in the afternoon. When this dip happens, your body temperature drops slightly, your alertness decreases, your brain starts craving rest. This isn't a flaw in your system, it's your system working exactly as it should. But what do most people do when this happens? They fight it. They drink another coffee, they push themselves to keep working or doing chores, and every single time they do that, they're forcing their cardiovascular system to work harder than it should. Their blood pressure rises, stress hormones flood their body, and their brain, which desperately needs to process and organize the morning's information, never gets that chance. When I finally gave myself permission to honor this natural rhythm, everything changed. I began lying down right when that wave of tiredness hit, and within minutes I'd drift into a light sleep. During those 45 minutes, something remarkable happens inside the body. Your brain consolidates memories from the morning, moving them from short-term to long-term storage. Your heart rate drops, your blood pressure normalizes, stress hormones like cortisol decrease dramatically, your immune system gets a boost, and when you wake up, you feel genuinely refreshed, not groggy. Researchers at Harvard Medical School studied thousands of older adults over many years and found something stunning. People who took regular afternoon naps of 30 to 60 minutes had a 37% lower risk of heart disease compared to those who never napped. Think about that. A simple afternoon rest, something that costs nothing and requires no equipment, cuts your heart disease risk by more than a third. That's more powerful than many medications. But there's a crucial detail here. Not all naps are created equal. If you nap for too long, more than 90 minutes, you risk entering deep sleep cycles that leave you groggy and can interfere with your nighttime rest. And if you nap too late in the day, after 4 in the afternoon, it can also disrupt your evening sleep. The sweet spot is that 45-minute window in the early afternoon. You get all the restorative benefits without any of the downsides. I have a friend named Carolyn. She's 74 and spent years fighting her afternoon fatigue with tea and willpower. She'd push through, feeling foggy and irritable every evening. Her family noticed she'd become short-tempered and distant. Then she read about the benefits of napping and decided to try it. Within 2 weeks, she told me she felt like a different person. Her evenings became peaceful. She had energy to cook dinner, to call her grandchildren, to actually enjoy her life instead of just surviving it. Her husband said it was like getting the woman he married back. That's the power of working with your body instead of against it. So if you've been fighting that afternoon tiredness, if you've been feeling guilty about wanting to rest, I'm giving you permission right now to stop fighting. Your body isn't being lazy, it's being intelligent. Honor that wisdom, and you'll be amazed at how much better you feel.
The second habit that transformed my health involves completely rejecting one of the biggest nutritional lies of the past 50 years. I eat full-fat, real dairy products every single day. Whole milk, full-fat Greek yogurt, real butter, actual cheese with flavor and richness. No low-fat versions, no skim milk, no margarine, nothing that's been stripped of its natural fat and pumped full of sugar and chemicals to make it palatable. Now, if you grew up in the same era I did, you're probably cringing right now, because we were told over and over again that fat was the enemy. Fat clogs your arteries. Fat makes you fat. Eat fat-free everything. That message was everywhere. Doctors preached it, magazines printed it, food companies plastered it all over their packaging, and we believed it. We filled our shopping carts with products that claimed to be healthy because they had zero fat. We thought we were doing the right thing. But here's what actually happened. When food manufacturers removed the natural fat from dairy products, the food tasted terrible. So they had to add something back to make it edible. And what did they add? Sugar.
loads of it, plus starches and artificial ingredients and stabilizers. So we went from eating natural, whole foods that humans had consumed for thousands of years to eating processed, engineered products that our bodies didn't recognize. And the results were catastrophic. Instead of getting healthier, we got sicker. Obesity rates exploded, diabetes became an epidemic, heart disease continued to climb, all while we dutifully avoided fat and loaded up on sugar and refined carbohydrates. It's one of the greatest public health failures in modern history. About 10 years ago, I decided I'd had enough. I stopped buying anything labeled low-fat or fat-free. I went back to the foods my grandmother ate: whole milk, real butter, full-fat yogurt, and I watched what happened to my body. My energy became steady throughout the day instead of spiking and crashing. My constant hunger disappeared. I felt satisfied after meals in a way I hadn't in decades. And when I went for my next checkup, my blood sugar levels were the most stable they'd been in years. Then I started reading the actual research, not the marketing materials, but the real scientific studies, and I discovered that everything I'd been told was backwards. A massive study from Tufts University followed over 3,000 seniors for 15 years, and what they found was shocking. People who ate full-fat dairy had a 42% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those who ate low-fat or fat-free versions. The food we were told to avoid for decades actually protects us from one of the most devastating diseases of aging. But why? How does this work? It comes down to how your body processes food. When you eat full-fat dairy, the fat slows down digestion. This means the natural sugars in milk are released slowly into your bloodstream instead of all at once. Your blood sugar stays stable. You don't get those spikes and crashes that leave you ravenous an hour after eating. The fat also helps your body absorb crucial vitamins. Vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble, which means they need fat to be absorbed. Without fat, these vitamins just pass through your system unused. You're essentially wasting them. Full-fat dairy also contains something called conjugated linoleic acid, a natural fatty acid that research suggests may protect against heart disease and certain types of cancer. And here's something most people don't know. Your brain is nearly 60% fat. It needs dietary fat to function properly, to maintain the protective coating around your nerves, to produce the neurotransmitters that regulate mood and cognition. When you starve your brain of fat, you're literally starving it of what it needs to stay sharp. I know a man named Robert. He's 76 years old and had been on a strict, low-fat diet for 30 years. His doctor had convinced him it would protect his heart. But Robert was miserable. He was constantly hungry, snacking all day long, and his blood sugar was wildly unstable. His doctor kept increasing his diabetes medication. Then Robert's daughter, who's a nutritionist, convinced him to try eating real food again. He switched to whole milk, full-fat yogurt, and butter. Within 6 weeks, his blood sugar stabilized, his A1C levels dropped. His doctor was baffled, but couldn't argue with the results. The truth is, humans have been consuming full-fat dairy for thousands of years. It's only in the last few decades that we decided to strip it of its natural components and call the processed version healthier. That experiment failed. So I'm going back to what worked for generations: real food, the kind that doesn't need a laboratory to create it. And my body has responded with gratitude. If you open your refrigerator today and see products labeled low-fat or fat-free, I want you to consider replacing them. Not overnight if that feels overwhelming, but gradually. Try whole milk in your coffee instead of skim. Use real butter on your vegetables instead of margarine. Choose full-fat yogurt with live cultures instead of the sugar-laden fat-free version. And notice how you feel. Notice if your hunger becomes more manageable. Notice if your energy smooths out. Notice if food starts tasting like food again instead of like a chemistry experiment. Your body knows the difference, even if the marketing departments don't want you to.
The third habit that keeps me healthier than most people I know is something I've been scolded about my entire adult life. I drink coffee. Real, caffeinated, wonderful coffee. Not one timid cup. I drink 3 to 4 cups throughout my morning and early afternoon. And before you start worrying about my heart or my nerves or my sleep, let me tell you what the latest science actually says. It might be one of the best things I do for my brain. For decades, coffee was treated like a vice, something you indulged in despite the damage it supposedly caused. People told me it would raise my blood pressure, make me anxious, give me heart palpitations, wear out my adrenal glands. I heard every warning imaginable. But I never stopped drinking it because, quite frankly, I love it. The ritual of brewing it, the warmth of the cup in my hands, the clarity it brings to my mornings. Coffee makes me feel more like myself, more present, more alive. So I kept drinking it, guilt and all. Then, about 5 years ago, research started emerging that completely vindicated my choice. A landmark study from Johns Hopkins University followed tens of thousands of older adults for many years, and what they discovered was remarkable. People who drank 3 to 5 cups of coffee daily had a 65% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease compared to those who rarely or never drank coffee. 65%. That's not a marginal difference. That's a massive protective effect. Scientists have now identified over 1,000 bioactive compounds in coffee. These aren't just caffeine. They're powerful antioxidants, anti-inflammatory agents, and neuroprotective substances that literally shield your brain cells from the kind of damage that leads to cognitive decline. Coffee helps prevent the accumulation of proteins that cause Alzheimer's. It improves the brain's ability to form and retrieve memories. It enhances focus and mental clarity. And it does all of this naturally, without any pharmaceutical intervention. But the benefits extend far beyond the brain. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that regular coffee drinkers have lower risks of type 2 diabetes, liver disease, certain cancers, and Parkinson's disease. Coffee actually improves insulin sensitivity, helping your body process sugar more effectively. It protects your liver from damage and inflammation. It's one of the richest sources of antioxidants in the modern diet, often providing more antioxidants than fruits and vegetables combined for people who drink it regularly. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone should suddenly start drinking 4 cups of coffee. Some people are genuinely sensitive to caffeine. It makes them jittery or anxious or disrupts their sleep. And for those people, moderation or avoidance makes sense. But for the majority of us, moderate coffee consumption, which research defines as 3 to 5 cups daily, is not only safe, but genuinely beneficial. The key is how you drink it. This is where most people go wrong. They turn their coffee into a dessert. 3 spoons of sugar, flavored syrups, whipped cream, caramel drizzle. At that point, you're not drinking coffee anymore. You're drinking a liquid candy bar that happens to contain some coffee. All the sugar and artificial ingredients completely negate the health benefits. What makes coffee beneficial are the natural compounds in the beans themselves, not the sugar cloud you've built around them. I've always drunk my coffee simply, black or with just a small splash of whole milk and maybe a pinch of cinnamon. That's it. No sugar, no syrups, nothing that distracts from the actual flavor of the coffee or diminishes its health properties. And I drink it mindfully. I don't gulp it down while rushing through my morning. I sit, I breathe, I savor it. That ritual, that moment of presence is just as valuable as the coffee itself. There's also a right time to drink coffee that most people don't know about. When you first wake up in the morning, your body is naturally producing cortisol, a hormone that helps you feel alert. If you drink coffee immediately upon waking, it can interfere with your natural cortisol rhythm and actually make you more dependent on caffeine over time. The better approach is to wait about an hour after waking. Let your body's natural wake-up system do its job first. Then, when your cortisol starts to dip, that's when you bring in the coffee to support your energy. They work together instead of competing. I also make sure to stop drinking coffee by mid-afternoon, usually around 2.
This gives my body plenty of time to process the caffeine for bedtime. Caffeine has a half-life of about 5 to 6 hours, which means it takes that long for half of it to leave your system. If you drink coffee too late, even if you don't consciously feel wired, it can interfere with the quality of your sleep, reducing the deep restorative stages that your body needs. I have a neighbor named Dorothy. She's 81 and had been avoiding coffee for years because her doctor told her it was bad for her heart. She drank herbal tea and felt fine, but her memory was declining noticeably. Her family was getting worried. Then she read about the cognitive benefits of coffee and decided to try it. She started with 2 cups a day, no sugar, just black. Within 3 months, she told me her mind felt sharper. She could remember conversations better. She finished crossword puzzles faster. Her doctor was skeptical until he tested her memory function and saw measurable improvement. So, the next time someone tells you drink too much coffee, smile and tell them you're protecting your brain. Because at this point, that's exactly what the science shows. Coffee isn't a guilty pleasure. It's a daily dose of neuroprotection, wrapped in a warm, comforting ritual that makes life just a little bit better. And in my book, that's worth every sip.
The fourth habit might surprise you even more than the others, because it goes against one of the most deeply ingrained pieces of health advice we've all heard. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true for everyone, and forcing yourself to live by someone else's rhythm can actually harm your health. For most of my life, I tried to be an early riser because that's what society told me healthy people did. I'd set my alarm for 6 in the morning, drag myself out of bed feeling exhausted, and spend the first few hours in a fog. But when evening came, I'd feel a surge of energy and clarity. My mind would come alive, ideas would flow, I'd feel creative and peaceful. And then I'd feel guilty about it because I thought something was wrong with me for not being tired at 9 in the evening. Then I learned something that changed everything. Our circadian rhythms, the internal clocks that govern when we feel alert or sleepy, actually shift as we age. Many older adults naturally become what scientists call evening chronotypes. We feel more alert and productive later in the day and prefer to sleep later in the morning. This isn't a disorder, it's a natural variation in human biology. Forcing yourself to fight against it creates chronic stress and actually worsens sleep quality. So about 8 years ago, I stopped fighting my natural rhythm. I let myself stay up until I genuinely felt tired, usually around 11 or 11:30, and I let myself wake up naturally, without an alarm, usually around 7 or 7:30. That gives me about 8 hours of opportunity to sleep. But more importantly, those hours align with when my body actually wants to sleep, and the difference has been profound. My sleep quality improved dramatically. Instead of lying awake for an hour trying to force sleep at 9 at night, I fall asleep within minutes at 11. Instead of waking up multiple times during the night, I sleep through until morning. And instead of feeling groggy and resentful when an alarm jolts me awake, I wake up naturally, feeling rested. Recent research from the University of California confirms what I experienced. The timing of sleep matters far less than the quality and consistency of sleep. Deep, restorative sleep is what heals your body, consolidates memories, regulates hormones, and strengthens your immune system. And you're far more likely to achieve that deep sleep when you're working with your natural rhythm instead of against it. I also discovered something beautiful about those late evening hours. They became sacred time for me. The house is quiet, the phone doesn't ring, there's no pressure or urgency. I use that time to reflect, to write in my journal, to read, to simply sit with my thoughts. It's become a form of meditation, a way to process the day and prepare my mind for rest. That mental peace translates directly into better sleep. But here's the crucial part. Whatever rhythm you choose, you must be consistent. Your body thrives on routine. If you go to bed at 11 one night, 9 the next, and midnight the night after, your internal clock gets confused. Your sleep quality suffers.
But if you go to bed at roughly the same time every night and wake up at roughly the same time every morning, even if those times are later than conventional wisdom suggests, your body learns the pattern. It starts preparing for sleep at the right time. You fall asleep faster and sleep more deeply. I knew a woman named Phyllis who spent years torturing herself trying to sleep early. She'd lie in bed from 9 until midnight, anxious and frustrated, finally falling asleep exhausted only to wake up at 4 in the morning unable to get back to sleep. She was chronically sleep-deprived and miserable. Then she read about chronotypes and realized she was fighting her own biology. She gave herself permission to go to bed at 11:30 and wake up at 7:30. Within a week, her sleep transformed. She told me it felt like a miracle, but it wasn't. It was simply her body finally getting what it needed. So if you're someone who comes alive in the evening, who feels your best thinking and creating after the sun goes down, stop feeling guilty. You're not broken, you're not lazy, you're honoring your authentic biological rhythm. Just make sure that when you do sleep, you create the conditions for deep, restorative rest. Keep your bedroom cool and dark. Turn off screens at least an hour before bed. Avoid heavy meals late at night. And give yourself a consistent schedule, even if that schedule looks different from your neighbor's. Sleep isn't about conforming to an arbitrary standard. It's about giving your body the deep recovery it needs to function at its best. And when you do that on your own terms, in your own time, the results speak for themselves. And now, the fifth habit, the one that I believe has done more for my health than anything else. It's something you can't buy in a pharmacy or learn in a medical textbook. It's something completely free, completely natural, and ridiculously powerful. I laugh at myself every single day. I know that sounds strange. You might be thinking, what does laughter have to do with health? But stay with me because the science behind this is extraordinary. When you laugh, genuinely laugh, your entire body chemistry changes in an instant. Your brain releases endorphins, the body's natural painkillers and mood elevators. Your stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, drop significantly. Your immune system gets a boost. Your blood vessels dilate, improving circulation almost as much as moderate exercise does. Laughter is literally medicine. Studies from the Mayo Clinic and University College London have shown that people who laugh regularly have stronger immune function, lower blood pressure, better heart health, and even live longer than those who rarely laugh. But here's the thing. I'm not talking about waiting for something funny to happen. I'm talking about actively choosing to find humor in everyday moments, especially in your own mistakes and quirks. I spill coffee on my shirt, and instead of getting frustrated, I laugh and say something like, well, there's my morning art project. I walk into a room and forget why I'm there, and instead of feeling embarrassed, I chuckle and say, the mystery continues. These tiny moments of self-directed humor transform stress into lightness. They remind me not to take myself so seriously, and that shift in perspective changes everything. As we age, life hands us plenty of reasons to feel heavy. Our bodies slow down. We forget things. We lose people we love. Plans fall apart. If we face all of that with grimness and rigidity, we break under the weight. But if we can find moments of levity, if we can laugh at the absurdity and beauty of being human, we stay resilient. We stay flexible. We stay alive in the truest sense. I know a man named George. He lost his wife of 53 years and fell into deep grief. For months, he barely spoke. He stopped seeing friends. He stopped doing the things he used to enjoy. Then one day, a friend invited him to a laughter yoga class. Yes, that's a real thing where people gather just to laugh together for no reason at all. George thought it was ridiculous, but he went anyway. And something shifted. He started laughing, really laughing for the first time since his wife died. And in that laughter, he found a small opening, a reminder that joy was still possible. It didn't erase his grief, but it made space for something else to exist alongside it. Within months, his blood pressure dropped, his energy returned. He started reconnecting with life.
That's what laughter does. It doesn't solve your problems, but it changes your relationship with them. It reminds you that you're more than your struggles, more than your limitations, more than your age. You're a living, breathing human being, capable of finding light even in dark moments. So I make it a practice. Every day, I look for something to laugh about. Sometimes it's watching a funny video. Sometimes it's remembering a silly moment from the past. Sometimes it's just laughing at how seriously I was taking something that doesn't actually matter. And every time I laugh, I feel my shoulders relax, my breathing deepens, my mind clears. It's like pressing a reset button on my entire nervous system. You don't need permission to laugh. You don't need a comedian or a funny movie. You just need a willingness to see the humor in being human, in being imperfect, in being exactly who you are right now. And when you do that, you'll find that laughter becomes not just a response to joy, but a creator of it.
So there you have it. 5 habits that transformed my health and shocked my doctor. Taking intentional afternoon rest, eating real full-fat dairy, drinking real coffee without guilt, sleeping on my own natural schedule, and laughing at myself as often as possible. None of these habits came from a textbook or a prescription pad. They came from listening. Listening to my body when it told me it was tired. Listening to my hunger for real, satisfying food. Listening to my mind when it craved clarity and ritual. Listening to my natural rhythms instead of forcing myself into someone else's mold, and listening to my spirit when it needed lightness and joy. The biggest lesson I've learned in 78 years is this: your body is not your enemy. It's not something to control, punish, or force into submission. It's your greatest ally, your wisest teacher, and your most faithful companion. And when you start treating it that way, when you start working with it instead of against it, something miraculous happens. You stop feeling like you're fighting a losing battle against age. You start feeling alive, energized, and genuinely at peace in your own skin. So, whatever age you are right now, I want you to consider this. What if the rules you've been following aren't actually helping you? What if your body has been trying to tell you something, but you've been too busy obeying outdated advice to listen? Give yourself permission to question everything. Try something different. Trust your instincts and see what happens when you stop resisting your own wisdom. Because at the end of the day, real health isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about actually enjoying your life instead of just enduring it. And sometimes that means breaking a few rules along the way. Trust me, at 78, I can tell you it's absolutely worth it.